"We're moving you to a better place," my son said, standing in the doorway of my own kitchen, like he didn't realize the weight of those words. A better place. As if the place I was in, my house, my quiet, creaking, memory-stuffed house, was no longer good enough for the woman who had scrubbed its floors, nursed its people, paid its mortgage, and mourned its ghosts. A better place for who? I should have asked. But I didn't. I just stood there with the ceramic mug in my hand and a quiet, practiced nod. I'd always been like that. Swallow first, ask later. Jason was already explaining the logistics before I could speak. They have medical staff, activities, a library, even a garden. It's called Silver Pines. Very well rated. You'll love it. He didn't sit down. He never does anymore. He comes in with the air still on his coat and the keys still swinging from his fingers, eager to leave even as he enters. "It's not permanent," he added, his eyes flicking to the fridge, probably wondering if I still kept my old shopping list stuck there with a clothespin. I did. Just until we figure out something more sustainable. He used that word like I hadn't spent my whole life sustaining things. Sustaining him, mostly. From the moment he was born, red-faced and squirming, to the last time I paid his credit card bill, 3 months ago. But who's counting? I nodded again, though my stomach had already dropped somewhere between the toaster and the tile. "I packed a few things already," he said. Erin helped. Just essentials. Erin, of course. My daughter-in-law, the woman who never learned how to make eye contact unless she was judging your shoes. Essentials, to her, meant clothes without holes and photo albums without my face in them. The guest room was already half empty when I walked in. 2 boxes labeled Nancy sat by the door. My red cardigan was crammed in one, half of it sticking out like it wanted to stay. They hadn't even closed the flaps. The ride to Silver Pines was quiet. Jason talked most of the way, to someone on the phone, not me. I watched the town go by from the window, each streetlight a pinprick in the fabric of what had been my life. The post office where I once mailed love letters. The high school where I worked the library desk for 27 years. The corner gas station where my husband used to buy me ginger ale when my joints acted up. Gone, gone, gone. Silver Pines looked like a hotel for people no one visits. Big windows, manicured lawns, and too much beige. The receptionist smiled too wide. "Welcome, Mrs. Draper. We're so glad you're here." "No, you're not," I thought. "You're paid to be glad." Jason was already checking his watch. "They'll get you settled in. I have that thing at the office." No hug, just a pat on the back like I was a Labrador. I stood in the hallway after he left. The carpet was thick, the lighting soft. There was a faint smell of antiseptic and vanilla. I walked to my room alone, dragging my suitcase, which was heavier than it should have been. I hadn't packed much. The room was neat. Bed made, side table empty. A little window overlooking a trimmed hedge. A folded brochure lay on the desk. "Welcome to Silver Pines, where life gets better." Better. There it was again. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. No pictures, no books, no sounds except the distant shuffle of feet down the hallway and the occasional squeak of a cart's wheels. I opened my purse and took out the photo of Thomas. My husband. Dead, 14 years now. The picture was old, the edges frayed. We were on a picnic, both of us squinting into the sun, holding hands like 2 teenagers. "I made the mistake of thinking love earns you something," I whispered to the photo. "Turns out, it just gives people permission to forget you." I lay back without undressing, my shoes still on. I stared at the ceiling until the lights shut off automatically. I hadn't asked the most important question. Not when Jason stood in my kitchen. Not when the receptionist handed me the key. Not when I unpacked my life into drawers I didn't choose. Better for who? The morning light through the thin curtains felt artificial, like it had been filtered through something sterile and soundproof. I opened my eyes to silence. No creak of the front door. No thud of the newspaper on the porch. Just the low hum of distant HVAC. My new bed was too soft, the kind that swallows your spine and makes you feel like you don't weigh enough to be taken seriously. Breakfast was at 8 hours, according to the laminated schedule on my nightstand. They'd left me a little printout with "Welcome Nancy" at the top, and underneath a list of activities: chair yoga, bingo, garden club, movie night. None of them felt like me. I wasn't here to play. The dining room was already buzzing when I walked in. Elderly voices blended into a soft, foggy murmur, like a pond of ducks just out of sight. White tablecloths, paper flowers. A worker in scrubs guided me gently to a chair, like I might tip over if left to my own devices. "You'll be with table 7, Mrs. Draper. We group by interests." "What interests?" I asked. "Lifestyle indicators," she said, smiling like I should know what that meant. At table 7 sat 4 women. One was asleep, her head tilted back, mouth open. Another one stirred her oatmeal with the dedication of a monk. The third scowled at the fruit cup like it had personally offended her. The fourth, surprisingly alert, looked me over with sharp gray eyes and a nod. "Name?" she asked. "Nancy." "I'm Gilda. That one's Lou. The growler is Irene. And the sleeper? That's Dee. She won't remember you. Don't take it personally." I nodded and sat. No one asked how I liked my eggs. Gilda sipped her tea. "Your kid dump you here too?" I blinked. "Don't worry," she continued, buttering a roll with surgical precision. "We all got the same speech. It's only temporary. It's for your safety. They have activities. It's like a script." "Jason said it was just until they figure out something sustainable," I said, the words tasting colder than they had when I first heard them. Gilda smiled without warmth. "They always do. Let me guess. Lawyer?" I looked up, startled. "Yes. Figures. They're the worst at pretending they're not lying." The oatmeal in front of me had started to form a crust. I wasn't hungry. After breakfast, I wandered down the hall to the library. It wasn't a library, not really. A few shelves, some puzzles, 2 well-worn recliners that smelled like talcum and sadness. I picked a book at random, Agatha Christie, and sat down. The spine cracked in a way that made me wince. Even the books here had been hollowed out by time. I must have dozed off. A nurse woke me gently, a woman named Carlene, young and too cheerful. "You okay, Mrs. Draper? You looked peaceful." "I was dreaming of a place that wasn't beige," I said. Carlene laughed, not quite understanding. "Would you like to join the garden club this afternoon?" I shook my head. "I think I'll pass." Later, in my room, I tried to unpack. My hands kept pausing over things. A sweater I used to wear to the Sunday market. The mug with Jason's handprint from first grade. An old recipe card in my husband's scrawl. I laid them out on the desk like relics, like proof. There was a knock at the door. The administrator. Her name was Delilah. Tall, styled, efficient. "Mrs. Draper," she said warmly, "just checking in." "Is everything to your satisfaction?" "Define satisfaction." She smiled, practiced. "Comfortable, safe, supported?" "I'm not sure comfort means what you think it means," I replied. Her tone didn't waver. "We understand transitions are difficult, but you'll see With time, many of our residents find this community enriching. That word again, community. As if loneliness could be outsourced to strangers who all got here the same way, uninvited. She left, and I sat for a long time at the small desk, staring at my things. The photo of Thomas, the little tin of sewing supplies, the crossword book I brought just in case. Each one a thread to the life I'd been plucked from like a weed. It hit me then. I hadn't just been moved. I'd been erased, lifted from the page of Jason's story like a typo he no longer had room for. They'd written me out so cleanly, they didn't even leave space for protest. But I still had a pen. I used to think that if you gave enough, stayed quiet enough, waited long enough, eventually someone would notice, would say thank you, would remember what it cost you. But memory is a strange thing. It edits, it selects, and people, especially your own, remember only what's convenient. I sat at the little desk in my room, fingers grazing over the photo of Thomas. He had that look in the picture I always loved. Tilted head, half smile, eyes that said he knew more than he let on. He was wearing the shirt I gave him on our 25th anniversary. I remembered how he hated the color, but wore it anyway, because I said it brought out his eyes. He was that kind of man. We bought the house on Lincoln Avenue in 1978. A modest 2-bedroom with a slanted porch and a lemon tree in the backyard that never gave fruit but shaded us all the same. I brought Jason home from the hospital to that house. His room had yellow wallpaper with cartoon lions. We couldn't afford much, but I sewed curtains by hand and painted his dresser in pale green, one drawer each night after work. Thomas worked at the post office. I was a school librarian, 30 years of reading circles, overdue slips, and trying to convince teenagers that stories mattered. Our life was not glamorous, but it was ours. We made meatloaf on Wednesdays and peach cobbler in the summer. We paid off the house year by year, nickel by nickel. We went without vacations to put Jason through college. He never knew what we gave up. I never told him. After Thomas died, suddenly, a heart attack, 2 days after Jason's 34th birthday, I kept the house. Everyone said I should sell. Too much space. Too many memories. But it was never about the size. It was about the walls that still heard his voice, the floor that creaked under the weight of our arguments and apologies, the cabinet that still held his cologne, half full, 13 years untouched. Jason came around a lot that first year. Grief looked better on him than guilt. He helped with the roof, brought takeout on weekends. Erin came too, though less often. She always looked like she had somewhere better to be. She called my house charming, in that way people do when they mean outdated. But I ignored it. I was just glad they came. Then the visits faded. First once a week, then once a month, then only when something needed signing. Still, I helped. When Jason wanted to buy their second house, I loaned them $20,000 for the down payment. Erin called it an advance on the future, whatever that meant. I paid for both their kids to attend that private school across town. Covered a semester when Jason lost a big client. Bought Erin a new dishwasher when she said hers sounded like a dying animal. I even paid for her to take those coaching classes to grow her brand. I wasn't sure what brand she meant, but again, I stayed quiet. Once, I made a spreadsheet. Just to see, just to count. $147,000. That's how much I'd given them over the past 12 years. Quietly, without a single receipt asked for. I hadn't thought of it in numbers until now. Until sitting here, in a room someone else chose for me. where my name is printed on a laminated card outside the door like a guest in a place I never asked to visit. A knock broke the quiet. It was Gilda from breakfast, holding 2 mugs of what smelled like mint tea. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. I shook my head. She walked in like she'd always belonged. "Irene snores like a lawnmower," she said, settling into the chair by the window. "You get used to it, or you go deaf. Either way, it's peace." We sat in silence for a while. I liked that about her. Didn't fill the air with nonsense. "Was he a good man?" she asked suddenly. "Who?" "The one in the photo, on your desk." I looked over at Thomas, that ever-steady smile. "Yes," I said. "Very." "You miss him?" "Every day." Gilda nodded like she understood. "Mine's been gone 23 years, still talk to him, usually when I'm mad." That made me smile. I talk to Thomas when I don't know what else to do. "Does he answer?" "Not out loud." She sipped her tea. "That's the cruel trick of growing old. We collect ghosts, not gifts." I looked down at my cup, then at my hands. They were still steady, still capable. "Gilda, do you ever feel like they just took your life out from under you?" She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "Every morning." We didn't say much after that. She left the mug on my desk before going. Mint's good for sleep, and for regret. I stayed by the window long after she left. Outside, the garden lights cast long shadows on the trimmed hedges. In my real backyard, weeds would have curled around the roots of that lemon tree. I would have let them. But here, everything was clipped, shaped, and silent. Too clean to be real, too quiet to belong. The trouble began with a peach. At breakfast, one of the kitchen staff placed a peach half, canned, pale, soft enough to dissolve in the mouth, into a small white bowl in front of me. No explanation, no offer of choice. I pushed it aside gently. "Could I have a boiled egg instead?" The young girl blinked like I'd asked for a rare delicacy. "I think the menu today is set, Mrs. Draper, but I can check." She didn't check, or if she did, no one returned. The peach stayed on the tray, wobbling slightly with every movement. By the end of breakfast, it was the only thing untouched. Later, in the common area, I watched a man in a cardigan fall asleep mid-chess move. A woman I hadn't met asked me what year it was. Twice. Gilda didn't come down that morning. Her chair at table 7 sat vacant, its silence louder than any voice. I walked to the reception desk. Delilah, the administrator, was standing there with a clipboard. She smiled before seeing me, and that smile faltered when it met my eyes. "I'd like to speak to someone about the meals," I said, polite but firm. "Of course," she said. "Is there a concern?" "I don't eat canned fruit. And I don't enjoy being spoken to like a toddler." There was a pause, just long enough to suggest she was measuring her response. "We have dietitians who create meal plans based on individual needs," she said, flipping a page on her clipboard. "Your son filled out your intake form. He requested a soft food option due to dental sensitivity." My back stiffened. "I don't have dental sensitivity." Delilah hesitated again. "Perhaps it was a misunderstanding. I can note that in your file." I didn't want it noted. I wanted it undone. But instead, I nodded and walked away. That was the first time I felt it. That shift. The quiet slide from person to patient. From woman to ward. My son had made decisions about my body without asking, and they'd obeyed. After lunch, a tasteless chicken soup and gelatin cube, I found myself in the hallway near the activity board. A woman named Carla was pinning up flyers. She offered me a bright, tired smile. Afternoon, Mrs. Draper. We've got origami class today and karaoke after dinner. I stared at the flyer. It had a cartoon microphone and the words, "Sing your heart out. Let's feel young again." I folded my arms. What if I don't want to feel young again? Carla's smile dimmed. Oh, well, you don't have to participate, but it's fun. Fun. I'd had fun once. Real fun. Thomas and I used to dance in the kitchen to old Motown records. Jason used to laugh so hard he'd get the hiccups. Life had been messy, spontaneous, not scheduled like a cruise for people who'd already reached the shore. That evening, I skipped dinner. I didn't want another tray of apology food. I sat by the window with a notebook, the one I used to keep household budgets, grocery lists, errands. Now I opened to a blank page and started to write. What I gave, $3,500 for Jason's braces, $14,000 for Aaron's grad school tuition. Babysitting every Friday night for 4 years. The down payment on the condo. My weekends, holidays, and Christmas mornings. The last years of Thomas's pension. My name, when it made them sound more respectable. My silence, when they made me feel small. I kept writing until the page was full. Then I flipped to the next. By the time I stopped, I'd filled 6 pages. It wasn't just about money. It was about the 1,000 small ways a mother hands over parts of herself until there's almost nothing left, until her preferences are inconvenient, her routines eccentric, her presence too much. That night, when the nurse came by with my pill cup, I didn't answer the door. She knocked twice, then gave up. I left the light on and sat in the chair until midnight. I didn't cry. I just stared at that notebook, full of numbers and names and dates. Proof that I had existed beyond the role they'd written for me, that I had chosen, sacrificed, built, endured. And now they'd traded all that for beige wallpaper and canned peaches? Jason arrived on a Sunday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks after he'd dropped me off. He didn't call first, just showed up. His car loud in the driveway, his gait too fast for a place like this. I saw him through the window, his silhouette pacing near the entrance, phone glued to his ear, probably finishing some deal, always closing something. When he walked into my room, he didn't hug me. He never did anymore. He just nodded, lips pursed like he was bracing for a smell he couldn't quite place. "Hey, Mom," he said, glancing around like he was appraising the space. I gestured toward the chair. "Sit down, if you're staying." He sat, but not fully, more like a crouch dressed up as politeness. He didn't take off his coat. "How are things?" he asked, already uncomfortable. I looked at him carefully. "Quiet." He nodded, hands on his knees. "Yeah, I figured. They told me you're not going to activities." "They don't interest me." He scratched his chin. "It's important to engage. Structure helps." Structure is what I had when I had a home. He blinked at that, clearly not expecting pushback. "Mom, we talked about this. You said you were okay with the transition." "I didn't say I was thrilled," I replied. "I said I understood." Jason exhaled, like he was already tired. "Look, I know it's a big change. Aaron and I just thought..." There it was. Aaron and I. Like she was welded into every decision about my life. "We just thought you'd be safer here. It's a good facility." "Is it?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "Because so far it feels like the waiting room for disappearing." Jason frowned. "That's dramatic." "No. Dramatic would be if I pulled the fire alarm and staged a protest in the courtyard. I'm just answering your question." He shifted in his seat. "You haven't been answering your phone." "I haven't wanted to." He looked at me. Finally. Really looked. I saw it then, just for a flash. Not the lawyer, not the man in the Audi, the boy who used to leave me sticky notes on the fridge. "Don't forget your umbrella, Mom." The boy who once cried because I didn't wave to him in the school assembly, the one who needed me. But it passed. He stood up. "We brought the kids. They're in the car." I raised an eyebrow. "You brought them to see me, but didn't bring them in?" Jason hesitated. "They've got homework. And Aaron's got a headache. We just wanted to swing by, check in." "Check in," I repeated. "Like a motel?" "Mom, please," he said. "Don't make this harder than it is." I stood now, too, slower than him, but taller somehow. Or maybe it was just the way I finally straightened my spine. "You've made this harder, Jason. You think you moved me to a better place. But better for who?" He didn't answer. "You visit on your schedule, call when it's convenient, and outsource everything else to staff with name tags. Do you even know how old Gilda is, or that my neighbor Dee thinks it's still 1963? Do you know that my teeth are fine and that I hate canned fruit?" He flinched. "I didn't know about the fruit." "Of course not. You didn't ask." Silence stretched. Then he checked his watch. "I have to get back. We've got Lily's piano recital later. Tell her I said good luck." He moved to the door, then turned. "I'll try to come by next week." "No rush," I said, not unkindly. "I'll still be here, just like the curtains. Just like the carpet." Jason stood there a second longer, like maybe he wanted to say something. But whatever it was, he swallowed it. The door clicked shut behind him. I sat back down. Outside, his car pulled away. I didn't see Lily or Aaron. I looked at the notebook again, the one with all my entries. I added a new line. 2-week visit. 15 minutes. Didn't stay for tea. Then I closed it. I didn't cry. I just looked at the mug on my shelf, the one with Jason's childhood drawing on it, and whispered more to myself than anyone. "You grew up, but I didn't disappear." Her name was Mabel Hawthorne, 92 years old, sharp as vinegar, with a voice like gravel and eyes that missed nothing. I met her in the garden 3 days after Jason's visit, while pretending to admire the azaleas. Truth was, I just wanted air that hadn't passed through a filter. She sat in a wrought iron chair under the trellis, legs crossed, a thick wool shawl draped over her like armor. Her cane leaned against the table, and a paperback thriller was open on her lap. Spine snapped like it had survived war. "You're new," she said, without looking up. "I suppose I am." She turned a page. "They always wander into the garden around day 10. That's when the shock wears off and the rot sets in." I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Mabel looked up then. Her skin was folded and lined like a map someone had handled too often, but her gaze was direct. "You start realizing this isn't just a pause. It's the beginning of being quietly forgotten." I didn't reply. There was nothing to say that didn't taste like denial. "I was a piano teacher," she went on, closing her book. 47 years. My students sent me letters, flowers, even concert invitations. Now I sit here with a cold biscuit and a view of trimmed hedges. Nobody calls anymore. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. She waved a hand. "Don't be. I'm not. I just wish someone had warned me before I signed the papers." That caught my attention. "What papers?" "The ones that handed over my house, my bank account, and my decisions, all in the name of efficiency." She smiled without humor. "My son said it was temporary, too. Said he'd check in every week. I see him on Christmas, if I'm lucky." I sat down slowly, my knees stiff. "Do you regret agreeing?" She didn't hesitate. I regret trusting someone who saw me as inconvenient. I stared down at my hands. My son said he wanted me to be safe, said it wasn't fair for me to live alone anymore. He's right about one thing, Mabel said, leaning back. It's not fair. But not in the way he thinks. The breeze shifted. Somewhere behind us, a door clicked open and then shut. Mabel closed her eyes briefly, her face lifted toward the sky. Do you know what the worst part is? She asked. I shook my head. You keep shrinking, not physically. That already happens. I mean inside. Your world gets smaller. One drawer, one bed, one schedule, one meal. You stop choosing. And after a while, you forget how to. The words settled between us like dust. I thought of my linen closet back home. The one Jason said was unmanageable. I remembered the little radio in my kitchen, tuned to the same station for 15 years. I thought of the way Thomas always folded his napkin twice before placing it on his plate. Those were choices, patterns, anchors. Gone now. Mabel turned to me again. Don't wait too long. If there's anything left that's yours, claim it, while you still remember how. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, the hallway light seeping through the crack beneath the door like a thin accusation. I pulled out the intake folder, the one Jason had filled out on my behalf. His handwriting was there, clean and confident. Prefers assisted support in decisions. Struggles with finances, son oversees major transactions. Low social activity. Benefits from structured interaction. None of it was true. I could manage money just fine. I balanced Thomas's pension for 12 years, invested in bonds, even helped Erin refinance their mortgage once when she got confused about the rates. As for social activity, I had a bridge club, a book club, a neighbor who brought me soup when I had the flu. It wasn't loud, but it was mine. I flipped to the last page. Power of attorney. Active. Signed 18 months ago. Jason Draper. I remembered now. The day he brought the form. Just in case something ever happens, he said. So we don't get tangled in red tape. I was still recovering from a fall. My wrist had been in a brace. I didn't read it closely. I just trusted. I sat back in the chair, heart pounding. I wasn't here by choice. I was placed. And they'd made sure I couldn't leave. At 3:12 a.m., I turned on the desk lamp and opened my notebook. The hallway was silent, save for the distant squeak of a cart. Someone making rounds, checking locks, dispensing pills. But here, in my small square of light, it was just me, the notebook, and a pen I'd taken from the front desk when no one was looking. Something about writing with a stolen pen felt right. A quiet rebellion. I titled the page, Everything I've Given. I'd already started a version of this list back in part 4 of my anger. But tonight was different. Tonight I wanted the full account. The audit of a life spent mostly in the service of others. To Jason from age 0 to now. Diapers. More than I could count. Cloth ones back in the day, washed by hand. Sleepless nights, rocking him through colic, fevers, nightmares. School projects. I stayed up until 1 a.m., once making a volcano out of papier-mâché. He got a ribbon. Told me the credit was his. College tuition, $18,000 from mine and Thomas's savings. We skipped 2 vacations to make it work. First car, a used Honda. I paid the insurance for 3 years. Wedding. $7,200, even though Erin's parents insisted they'd cover half. They didn't. Babysitting, every Thursday night, and Saturday mornings, and when Erin needed a break. The house fund, $25,000 wired after 1 phone call. Mom, we're tight this month. The remodel, Aaron wanted an open kitchen. I wanted peace. The guilt trips. Hundreds. All of them free of charge. I kept writing, page after page. Not just numbers, but pieces of myself. The meals I cooked, the stories I read aloud, the days I left the porch light on, hoping he'd stop by after work. I flipped the notebook and titled the next page, What I Got in Return. There were fewer entries. A mug with one mom on Mother's Day, 2009. Jason forgot the next year. A necklace Aaron picked out, still with the price tag on. A seat at the end of the holiday table, foldable chair, no place card. A text message on my birthday this year. No call. A room in a place I didn't choose. With a power of attorney I barely remember signing. I stopped. Not because I was finished, but because the ache in my chest had become heavy, like a weight I'd carried so long I no longer noticed it until it shifted. I looked over at Thomas's photo. Was I too soft? I whispered. His eyes stared back, calm as always. He used to say, "Love doesn't mean silence, Nance." And I used to nod like I understood. But I didn't. Not really. Because silence is how it starts. You let them skip your birthday call once, and then twice. You say yes when they ask for help, even when it's not really help but obligation. You let them rearrange your life under the name of concern. You make it easy for them to forget you still have a spine. And one day, you wake up in a room that smells like antiseptic and beige paint, with a peach on your tray, and a nurse calling you sweetheart. The scariest part? I'd almost accepted it. I stood and walked to the mirror. I didn't look sick. I didn't look frail. My hair was silver, sure, but full. My eyes still sharp, still blue. There were lines on my face, yes, but they weren't just age. They were maps of survival, of days that demanded more than I had and nights that asked me to keep going anyway. I was not gone. I was not finished. And I was not, under any circumstances, going to be erased. I sat back down and flipped to a fresh page. This time, I didn't write a list. I wrote a sentence. Tomorrow, I find out exactly what Jason signed and how I get it undone. And under that, smaller. No one erases Nancy Draper. I started with polite. Always start with polite. You get more information when they're not on alert. The next morning, after the breakfast I didn't touch, scrambled eggs that looked like foam and toast without butter, I walked down to the administrative office. Delilah was typing something into her computer, her nails clicking like distant footsteps in a long hallway. She smiled when she saw me. Not warmly, just the way people smile when they need the record to show they were kind. "Mrs. Draper, is everything okay?" "Actually," I said, folding my hands in front of me, "I'd like to review the paperwork my son submitted when I was admitted here." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes stilled. "Well, we don't typically share those documents unless there's a legal request. I'm the subject of the documents. Yes, but the power of attorney is active. Your son's listed as your representative." I kept my voice even. "And what does that mean, exactly?" "It means Jason has the legal right to make decisions on your behalf. Medical, financial, administrative. It's fairly common, especially in transitions like yours." "Transitions," I repeated. Delilah's smile tightened. "We understand this can be emotionally complicated, but your son was very clear about your preferences." I raised an eyebrow. "Was he?" She shifted in her seat. "He emphasized safety, stability. He said you'd been overwhelmed managing the house, that you'd fallen behind on bills, that this move was in your best interest." I stared at her. I've never missed a mortgage payment in my life. My house was paid off 5 years ago, and I've been managing my finances since before Jason knew how to write his own name. Delilah blinked, caught between policy and discomfort. Perhaps he misunderstood. No, I said calmly. He misrepresented. There's a difference. She cleared her throat. Mrs. Draper, I suggest we arrange a family meeting. Jason could explain. No. The word surprised even me, how sharp it came out. Not shrill, just final. I don't need him to explain. I need you to tell me what my rights are. Delilah leaned back in her chair. As long as the power of attorney is active, your son can authorize payments, make changes to your care, and restrict access to certain information. Can I revoke it? You can, if you're deemed competent. I felt something cold settle at the base of my spine. Deemed by whom? A physician, usually a neurologist or geriatric specialist. We'd need a formal assessment. And who initiates that process? Delilah hesitated. Often, the holder of the power or a legal representative. My lips pressed together. I nodded slowly. I see. I stood. Delilah's voice softened slightly. Mrs. Draper, we're not trying to trap you here. Silver Pines is committed to dignity and comfort. Dignity, I echoed. Would dignity include being able to see the bank account with my name on it? Her mouth opened, closed. I'm not sure. I smiled, tight as thread. Then I'll find someone who is. I walked out of the office without another word. In my room, I sat at the edge of the bed. I looked at my notebook, still open from last night. I turned to a new page. What I need: copy of the power of attorney, access to my financial statements, independent cognitive evaluation, a lawyer, proof that I am still mine. I underlined the last line twice. The next person I called wasn't Jason. It wasn't even Gilda, though I wanted to hear her gruff reassurance. It was Lily, my granddaughter. I dialed slowly, fingers stiff with something deeper than age. It rang 3 times. Grandma? Her voice was surprised, a little breathless. Hi, sweetheart, I said. Do you have a minute? Of course. Are you okay? I looked around the room, at the photo on the desk, at the stillness, at the door that locked from the outside. I'm not sure, I said. But I think I need your help. Lily came that same afternoon. I wasn't expecting her so fast. She lived nearly an hour away, and it was a workday. But by 4:15, she was standing in the doorway of my room, breathless, cheeks pink from the November wind. Grandma, she said, dropping her bag and pulling me into a hug that felt real, not polite, not choreographed, just real. Thank you for coming, I whispered into her shoulder. She pulled back. You sounded, I don't know, not scared, but off. What's going on? I showed her the folder, the power of attorney, the intake forms, the notes Jason had written, false claims about my finances, my independence, my capacity. She read everything without interrupting. When she finally looked up, her face had changed. No more softness. Her jaw was tight. Did you know about this? I asked. Lily shook her head. No. Dad told us you wanted to be here. Said you were tired of taking care of the house, that it was your decision. It wasn't. She sat on the edge of the bed. Do you want to leave? Yes, I said without hesitation. But I want to leave on my terms, and I want everything undone, what he signed, what he controls, all of it. Lily nodded slowly. Then we need a lawyer. And a medical assessment. And time. I have time, I said. I don't have patience. That night, I didn't go to dinner. When Carla knocked, I didn't answer. When a nurse came by with evening meds, I told her I wasn't taking anything I hadn't approved. She frowned. But it's on your chart. And I want to see the chart. That's not how it works, Mrs. Draper. I stared at her. That's exactly the problem. She left, promising to report the refusal. Good. Let them report. Let them notice. Let them remember I'm still here. At 9 p.m., I walked down the hall to the TV room where 3 residents slept in chairs while a nature documentary played to no one. I unplugged the screen. The sudden silence startled even the staff. I went back to my room, closed the door, and flipped to a new page in my notebook. What they control. My food, my schedule, my medication, my money, my voice. I drew a box around the last one. Then I wrote, what I still control: refusal, memory, dignity, resistance, truth. The next morning, they sent Delilah. She didn't knock. She walked in with a nurse behind her, both of them wearing the kind of smiles people use on difficult patients. Mrs. Draper, Delilah said gently, we're concerned. Are you? We heard you've refused medication, meals, and routine care. I haven't refused care, I said calmly. I've refused control disguised as kindness. The nurse shifted, unsure whether to interject. Delilah clasped her hands. Is there a reason you're upset? I found the papers, Delilah. Her face didn't move. I read what my son wrote about me, I continued. And I'm telling you now, formally, I do not consent to him representing me. As I mentioned before, the process to revoke will be initiated, I cut in. Lily is contacting legal counsel, and I'll be seeking an independent medical evaluation. Delilah gave a slow, polished nod. We understand. But until that time, we must operate under the current documents. Then operate carefully, I said, because I'm no longer cooperating. She left soon after, the nurse trailing behind her like a shadow. I stood by the window for a long time. Outside, the garden was still. The benches were empty. The sky a dull, indifferent gray. But something had shifted. Not in the building. In me. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a resident. I felt like a person again. Not someone they moved. Someone who moved herself. Lily came again 2 days later, this time with her laptop, a folder of printed documents, and a look that reminded me of Thomas when someone challenged his sense of justice. They tried to tell me I couldn't bring this in, she said, settling in across from me at the little desk. Said it would disrupt your calm environment. I told them your calm environment was the problem. I smiled. It was the first real one in weeks. She opened her folder. I found a lawyer, someone independent, no connection to Dad, no conflict of interest. Her name is Rachel Tan. She specializes in elder protection and POA disputes. Is she expensive? She said she'd take the case pro bono, said she had a grandmother who went through something similar. I nodded slowly, absorbing it all. And the evaluation? Lily turned her laptop toward me. Dr. Edwin Varga, board certified in geriatric neurology. I already spoke to his assistant. He'll do a full capacity evaluation, and he knows what to look for when someone's been pushed into care under false pretenses. I reached out and squeezed her hand. You're doing a lot for me. You did more for me, she said. I remember. Do you? I asked softly. Every Saturday you picked me up, even when Dad said you didn't have to. Every time you let me bake and ruin your kitchen. Every time you said yes when no one else had time. I blinked hard. Lily looked away for a moment, then back. You're not someone to erase, Grandma. You're the only one who ever actually saw me. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. Dr. Varga is coming in 4 days. You'll meet with him privately. I've made sure you get a copy of every document, every result. No more secrets. Will Jason be notified? Not until we're ready. I felt the ground under me begin to steady, not because I had full control again, but because someone who mattered, stood beside me. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I changed into my favorite cardigan. I brushed my hair, applied the lightest touch of lipstick. And I walked into the dining hall, not to eat, but to sit beside Gilda, who looked up with a smirk. "Well, well," she said. "You look like a woman plotting something." "I am. I hope it's arson?" "Not quite, but close." She chuckled. "About damn time." We sat in silence for a while, our trays untouched. Finally, she leaned in. "You getting out of here?" "I'm going to try." Gilda nodded. "Don't leave quietly." "Oh, I won't." The next morning, Delilah found me in the hallway near the activity board. She smiled with careful restraint. "Good morning, Mrs. Draper. I hear you've had visitors." "I've had advocates," I corrected. She blinked. "We ask that all legal and medical appointments be cleared with administration." "I'm not asking." She stared at me for a long moment. "We'll need documentation." "You'll have it." "Mrs. Draper, I'd like to remind you that we're here to help." "Then help me walk out the door," I said, "with my name intact." She didn't reply. She just turned and walked away. That afternoon, Lily brought me a small phone, unregistered, pay as you go, just for this. My line to the outside. She set it in my drawer. "Just in case they try to shut you out again." "They might." She squeezed my shoulder. "But now they have to get through me." After she left, I stared at the phone for a long time. So small, so light. But it weighed more than anything in the room. I picked it up, dialed the number I hadn't used in years, and waited. "Whitaker Law?" a voice said on the other end. "This is Rachel." I took a breath. "This is Nancy Draper. I'm ready." Rachel Tan arrived with a brown leather satchel and shoes too sensible for someone her age. She was younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe, but there was something old in her eyes. Not tired, just used to seeing things people don't want to admit out loud. We met in the small conference room near the reception desk, the only place they let us confer without supervision. Still, I could feel someone watching through the frosted glass. Let them. Rachel unfolded her file calmly. "Mrs. Draper, I've reviewed your documents. The power of attorney your son holds is broad, financial, medical, legal, but there are problems." "Such as?" "For starters, there's no evidence of medical necessity at the time it was activated. No doctor's note, no cognitive assessment, just your signature." "I remember the day. I was recovering from a fall. I didn't read it." "That's the other issue," she said, flipping to another page. "Given your medical state at the time, it's possible the signature could be challenged, especially if we can demonstrate you weren't aware of the scope." "And the revocation?" "I've filed the request. Once we get your capacity evaluation from Dr. Varga, assuming it supports your case, we'll petition to revoke the POA and restore full decision-making rights." "And Jason?" Rachel's expression didn't change. "He's already responded. I contacted him out of courtesy, as your son, not your counsel. He wasn't pleased." I nodded. "He'll come. He said he would. Tomorrow." That night, I slept with my notebook under my pillow. Not out of fear, out of resolve. When Jason arrived the next day, he didn't come alone. Erin came too. She was wearing a long beige coat and carried herself like she was walking into a courtroom. Her eyes scanned the lobby like it was beneath her. Jason looked tired. Not in the physical sense, but in the way men look when they know they've lost moral footing, but are still trying to control the narrative. "Nancy," Erin said, sitting down across from me in the same conference room. "We're very concerned." "That's interesting," I said, "because for a long time, you weren't." Jason raised a hand. "Let's not do this." "No," I said. "Let's." Rachel sat beside me, quiet but alert. She didn't interrupt. Jason leaned forward. "Mom, what's going on? You're being manipulated." I stared at him. "By whom? The lawyer who's helping me reclaim my legal rights? Or the granddaughter who listened when you stopped?" His jaw tightened. "We just want what's best for you." "No," I said. "You want what's easiest for you." Erin crossed her legs. "You're letting one visit with Lily undo everything we've built." "What exactly have you built?" I asked. "A system where you hold the keys to my bank account? A schedule I didn't choose? A home I didn't want? That's not structure. That's custody." Jason stood. "I'm not going to be attacked for trying to help you." "No one asked you to help. I asked you to visit, to call, to remember I existed when it wasn't about money or emergencies." Rachel cleared her throat. "Mr. Draper, your mother is exercising her right to revoke the power of attorney. She has retained legal counsel. Any further interference will be treated as a violation of her autonomy." Jason looked stunned. For once, he didn't have a comeback. Erin stood too. "You'll regret this." "I already regret trusting you," I said. "But I won't regret reclaiming myself." They left without another word. Rachel packed her folder and turned to me. "You were firm. That matters." "I wasn't firm," I said. "I was honest." That evening, Lily returned. We sat together on the bed, side by side. "They're going to fight this," I said. "They'll lose," she replied. "Because now you're not alone." I turned to her. "Promise me something." "Anything. When I'm gone, long, long from now, don't let them write the story without you. Keep your voice. Keep your name." She nodded, her eyes glassy. "I will." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. They called it Resident Memories Week, a bland title for what was essentially a hallway exhibition. Each of us was given a small table near the common room, space to display our life story, as Delilah put it. She said it was about celebrating identity. I knew better. It was about appearances, about brochures, about letting the outside world see that the inside wasn't hollow. Still, I signed up. Not because I believed in it, but because I knew what I wanted to say. Gilda skipped it. "My memories are mine," she muttered, sipping her mint tea like it was gin. "Let them print smiles on someone else's grief." I understood, but I needed something different. I spent the night before digging through the box under my bed, the one Lily brought from the house. I took out the photo albums, the letters, the postcards Thomas sent me from business trips, even when we'd been married 20 years. But the centerpiece was one framed photo, a black and white from 1984. We were at the kitchen table. Thomas in his postal uniform, Jason beside him, maybe 7 or 8, holding a pencil in one hand and his father's face in the other. I was behind the camera. You couldn't see me. But you could feel me there. That morning, I dressed with care. Navy cardigan, flat shoes, hair pinned. I looked like someone with authority over herself. I arranged my table slowly, the photograph in the center. To the left, a copy of my first paycheck as a librarian, $602.18 before taxes. To the right, a birthday card Jason made when he was 10. You're the best mom in the world, even when you make broccoli. Underneath it, I laid a small printed sign. Simple, no flourishes. I gave everything, and they called it a burden. Visitors came and went, families, volunteers, the bored and the curious. They smiled politely at quilts and pressed flowers and golf trophies. Then they came to my table, and they stopped smiling. I watched their faces shift, watched something settle in them. Recognition, or guilt, or just the shock of being told the truth in a room designed for comfort. Delilah passed by, her clipboard tucked tight to her chest. She said nothing. She didn't have to. By the end of the day, 3 other residents had added their own signs. Gilda's read. My son took my piano, said the silence would help me rest. Dee's daughter tried to remove hers. Staff stopped her. That night, I stood in the dining hall as they cleared the trays. I asked for the microphone usually reserved for karaoke. They hesitated, but I waited. Eventually, they handed it to me. I didn't give a speech. I just held up the photo from my table. This is my family, I said. Or it was. For 40 years, I supported them, paid for them, prayed for them. And when I became inconvenient, they called it safety. The room was silent. I looked around. I am not a mistake. I am not a burden. I am not waiting to disappear. I placed the microphone down on the table, and I walked out. No applause, just quiet. Which, in its own way, was louder than anything I'd ever heard in that place. Back in my room, I opened my notebook. Wrote only one sentence. Tomorrow, I become legally myself again. And then I crossed it out. Not because it wasn't true, but because I already was. Dr. Varga was nothing like I expected. No clipboard, no condescension, no cold smile designed to reassure the elderly. Just a worn leather satchel, eyes that missed nothing, and a calm, neutral tone that told me he wasn't here to coddle or patronize, just to listen. We met in the wellness room, which normally hosted chair yoga and laughter therapy. Today, it held a folding table, 2 chairs, a jug of water, and a recorder. He asked if I consented to being recorded. I insist, I said. He smiled. The evaluation lasted nearly 2 hours. He asked questions about memory, orientation, abstract reasoning. I recited addresses from memory, spelled world backward, named 5 types of birds. Then he asked more personal questions. What day is it? Tuesday. Where are we? Silver Pines Assisted Living. Not by choice. Why do you believe you're here? I took a breath. Because my son thought it would be easier to manage me in a place where I didn't have access to my money, my home, or my own decisions. He paused. Do you believe you're mentally competent to live independently? I managed a household, finances, and a job for 40 years. I balanced Thomas's pension, filed taxes without error, held library records without losing a single student file. I cooked, fixed a leaking sink, helped raise grandchildren, read novels in 2 languages, and survived a stroke with all my faculties intact. I met his eyes. Yes, doctor, I believe I'm competent. He nodded. Later, he asked about feelings, depression, isolation, regret. Have you had thoughts of self-harm? No, only of self-respect. That made him write something. When it was done, he stood, shook my hand, and said, I'll be honest with you. This happens more than it should. I looked at him. Then stop letting it happen quietly. He gave a sad smile. That's what I'm here for. Rachel arrived an hour later. She took the report, flipped through it quickly, then looked up at me. You passed, with clarity, full capacity. I could have told you that. You did, she said. Now the court will believe it too. The paperwork was submitted that evening, an emergency motion to revoke the power of attorney and restore full rights. We expected a fight. We got something worse. Silence. Jason didn't respond. For 2 days, no email, no call, no statement. Rachel said it was a strategy. To delay. To outweight me. Maybe he thought I'd get tired. Maybe he thought I'd crumble. But I wasn't that woman anymore. On the 3rd day, Lily came with an envelope in her hand. He sent this, she said, dropping it on the desk like it was something dead. Inside was a check. $1,200. Memo line. Monthly support. I laughed, not loud, just the kind that comes when something inside you snaps and resets at the same time. He thinks I'm for sale. Lily was furious. He thinks you'll go away if he sends enough guilt money. I folded the check in half, then in quarters, and tucked it into the trash can. No response, I said. Only movement. The next morning, Rachel called. The judge had granted the motion. I was officially restored. My name, my voice, my accounts, my choices, no conditions, no further oversight. Rachel's voice didn't change much, but I could tell she was relieved. I'll send the formal notice to the facility today. They're legally required to honor your independence effective immediately. And Jason? He was copied. He didn't reply. Let him be silent, I said. It's the most honest thing he's ever done. After the call, I sat on the bed and looked around the room. I wasn't packed yet. But I was already leaving. Not just the building. The role they'd assigned me. The woman who thanked them for wiping away her freedom. That wasn't me. Not anymore. That afternoon, I walked down the hallway slowly. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted to feel every step. I passed the rec room, where someone was trying to teach watercolor. I passed the nurse's station where no one looked up. Then I turned the corner and found Gilda in her chair by the window, knitting a scarf the color of storm clouds. She looked up. Well? It's done. She didn't smile, but her hands stopped moving. That was enough. I'm leaving tomorrow. She nodded. You should. You could too. I will, soon. I put my hand on her shoulder. Promise? She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. Back in my room, I made a new list. Not debts, not wounds, not things I'd lost. What I take with me. My name, signed in my own hand. My life as I remember it. My granddaughter's voice when she said, I believe you. My silence, now broken. My story, still mine. I turned off the light and slept without waking once. I left Silver Pines on a Thursday. No fanfare, no flowers, no staff lining up to shake my hand or say, we'll miss you. Just a folded copy of my discharge form, a cardboard box with the few things I'd brought, and Lily's car waiting outside with the trunk already open. Gilda met me by the door. She wasn't knitting today. She was standing, cane in one hand, a brown coat over her shoulders, her chin held a little higher than usual. You got out, she said, voice low. So can you. Maybe, she said. I'll think about it. I didn't push her. I knew better now. No one leaves until something shifts inside them. No one moves until staying still becomes unbearable. I just reached into my coat pocket and handed her a small envelope. What's this? Instructions. For a lawyer. Rachel said she'd help if you're ready. No pressure. Gilda turned it over slowly. You always were too damn polite. No, I said. I just used to confuse kindness with silence. She nodded, slipping the envelope into her pocket like a secret. I won't say goodbye, she said. Just don't forget. I won't, I told her. Not this place. Not what it taught me. And I meant it. Because for all its beige walls and bad coffee, Silver Pines gave me something I hadn't known I'd lost. The reminder that I was still here, still thinking, still angry, still full of memory and want, still alive. Lily was waiting by the passenger door, phone in hand, coat half zipped. You sure you don't want to stop at the apartment first? She asked. I'll go straight home. The locks were changed, just so you know, and the alarm code too. I nodded. Figures. I had the locksmith reprogram everything. You're the only one with the new code. I looked at her, really looked. This girl, no, this woman, had walked into a storm I didn't even know how to name, and she never flinched. I hope you know, I said, that I wouldn't have made it without you. She shrugged, embarrassed. I only did what you taught me. You listened. That's more than most ever learn. The ride home was quiet. Not the heavy silence of avoidance, but the kind that stretches between two people who've earned it. The road unfurled in front of us like ribbon, and for once, I didn't flinch at the turns. When we pulled up to the house, I just sat there a moment. The lemon tree in the backyard was still bare, its branches spindly but stubborn. The porch still sloped to the left. The window box I planted geraniums in every spring was empty, waiting. I stepped out of the car and stood on the walkway. Nothing had changed. And everything had. Inside, the air was still, not dusty, not sour, just still, like the house had been holding its breath. I walked from room to room without turning on the lights. My fingers grazed the back of the couch, the edge of the counter, the chipped tile near the sink, where Thomas once dropped a casserole dish and cursed for the only time I ever heard him do it. I touched everything, not to reclaim it, just to remember that it had always been mine. Lily didn't follow me. She stayed in the kitchen, unpacking the little bag I'd brought. I heard her setting down mugs, the soft click of plates, the sound of drawers opening and closing. I went into the bedroom. The bed was made, sheets fresh, my old robe on the hook. I sat on the edge and took off my shoes. Then I lay down, not because I was tired, but because I could, because no one would knock, no one would decide what time I had to eat. No one would call me sweetheart and lead me back to a chair I hadn't asked for. Later, we had tea. Just the two of us. No plan, no appointment. Just silence and steam and the quiet, extraordinary feeling of being home. Lily looked up from her mug. What now? I smiled. I write? About what? About this. About all of it. So someone else, somewhere, doesn't think they're alone when it happens to them. She nodded. You think it happens a lot? More than anyone admits, especially to women like me. Women who gave too much and asked too little. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. I'm glad you're back. I never left, I said softly. They just tried to replace me with silence. That night, after she left, I opened my notebook to the very last page. No lists this time, just one line. They tried to rewrite me, but I took the pen back. The house creaked at night, the way old houses do. Honest sounds, wood shifting against memory, pipes sighing like they remember too much. But it didn't scare me. I knew every noise. I'd named them years ago. I moved slowly through the kitchen, fingers brushing the edge of the counter, the corner where Thomas used to lean while he read the mail. I brewed tea, not for comfort, but for rhythm. Life is mostly rhythm, I've found. Not grand events, just the gentle returning to what we know. The letter came a week later, from Jason. No return address. Just my name, spelled carefully, like he remembered he owed me that much. I read it once, then again. It was short. Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I was helping. I thought you'd be safer. Aaron said, "No, that's not fair. I made decisions without asking. I spoke for you when I should have listened. You didn't deserve that. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here." Jason. There was no apology in the legal sense, but it was something. And that's the trick of being a mother. You learn to accept the small openings, the ones buried beneath pride and self-defense. I didn't write back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He knows where I am. If he wants to find me, he'll have to come as a man, not as a manager. Lily visits often now, sometimes with her girlfriend, who brings soup and asks good questions. We sit on the porch and watch nothing in particular. I like that. The freedom to be quiet without being invisible. A few weeks ago, I started writing it all down. Not just what happened at Silver Pines, but everything that came before. The long giving, the slow erasure. The names I once answered to that were not mine. I call it the inventory. It's not for publication. It's for clarity. For anyone who wakes up and realizes she's been written out of her own story. I get letters now. From Gilda. From others who saw that little sign I taped to my table. I gave everything, and they called it a burden. It's been shared, apparently. Someone took a photo. It made its way online. I've seen versions of it now in nursing homes across the country. Somewhere, a woman I'll never meet read it and whispered, "Me too." That's enough for me. I don't want revenge. I want return. Return of voice, of name, of weight. Some days are quiet. I make toast, feed the birds, call no one. Some days are loud. I speak to women's groups. I send letters to lawmakers. I tell them what happens when we let convenience become policy, when we let sons and systems take the wheel and forget who they're driving. But most days are just mine, and that is the win. I thought I was too old to begin again, but that was the last lie I believed. You're never too old to be your own again. You're never too old to say no. And if someone ever tells you they're moving you to a better place, ask them, better for who? Then listen carefully, because the answer tells you everything. If this story found you, if you've ever been quiet when you should have been fierce or helpful when you needed to hold, know this. You are not too much. You are not ungrateful. You are not alone. They only win when you stop naming what was taken. So name it. Take it back. And if you can't shout yet, then write. Write like your dignity depends on it. Because sometimes it does. If this meant something to you, share it. Say something. Don't let the silence win.